The Holocaust remains one of the most horrific chapters in human history. Orchestrated by Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime, it led to the systematic extermination of 6 million Jews and millions of other minorities, political prisoners, and perceived enemies of the state between 1941 and 1945. Central to this genocide were the concentration camps and extermination camps where unspeakable atrocities were committed. This history lesson aims to shed light on the methods used to deceive, transport, and ultimately exterminate millions of people during the Holocaust, with particular emphasis on the use of showers as instruments of torture and death. Deception and transport. Deceptive practices. The Nazis employed various deceptive tactics to facilitate the mass deportation of Jews and other victims to concentration camps. One of the most insidious methods was the use of propaganda and false promises. Many Jews were told they were being resettled in the East for labor. They were assured of good living conditions and the opportunity to start anew. The Nazis went to great lengths to maintain this facade, even producing fake postcards from resettled Jews to reassure those yet to be deported. Forced roundups. The process began with forced roundups in ghettos and cities across occupied Europe. Jews were often given little notice and allowed to bring only a few possessions. Punishments for rule violations, beatings, and physical torture. One of the most common forms of punishment was severe beating. Guards and SS officers frequently used clubs, whips, and fists to inflict pain on prisoners. These beatings were administered for a wide range of infractions, from attempting to escape to failing to work hard enough. Victims often suffered broken bones, internal injuries, and severe bruising. In many cases, the beatings were so severe that they resulted in death. Standing cells. In some camps, prisoners were subjected to standing cells. These were small, narrow spaces where inmates were forced to stand for hours or even days without rest. The lack of space and inability to sit or lie down caused extreme physical and psychological distress. Many prisoners collapsed from exhaustion and pain. Hanging and strangulation. Hanging was another form of punishment. Prisoners were hanged publicly as a deterrent to others. In some cases, they were hanged by their wrists, causing excruciating pain and dislocation of the shoulders. Strangulation was also used, often with the victim suspended from a tree or a gallows. The death baths, cold showers, and hypothermia. The term death baths is often associated with the use of cold showers and forced immersion in freezing water. These methods were used as a form of punishment and torture. Cold showers. Inmates were subjected to high pressurized cold showers, particularly during the winter months. These showers took place in unheated rooms with water temperatures just above freezing. The shock of the cold water caused immediate physical distress. Extended exposure led to hypothermia, a condition where the body's core temperature drops dangerously low, impairing normal bodily functions and often resulting in death. Forced immersion. Prisoners were sometimes forced to stand or sit in tanks of icy water for prolonged periods. This method was used as both a punishment and a means of execution. Victims would shiver uncontrollably. Their bodies would become numb, and eventually they would lose consciousness and die from the cold. Other forms of atrocious punishments. Forced labor. Prisoners who broke rules or were deemed undesirable were often assigned to the most grueling and dangerous labor tasks. These included working in quarries, constructing infrastructure, or handling hazardous materials without any safety precautions. The physical demands, coupled with inadequate food and rest, led to the death of many inmates. Medical experiments. Inmates were subjected to horrific medical experiments, often under the guise of scientific research. These experiments included exposing prisoners to extreme conditions, testing the limits of human endurance, and experimenting with various chemicals and drugs. Many of these experiments were conducted without anesthesia, causing immense pain and suffering. The victims often died as a result or were left with permanent disabilities. Conclusion: the punishments and tortures inflicted on prisoners in Nazi concentration camps were characterized by their extreme cruelty and inhumanity. Methods like beatings, standing cells, hangings, and the so-called death baths exemplify the brutality of the Nazi regime. These acts of punishment were designed not only to discipline, but also to terrorize and dehumanize the inmates. Understanding these atrocities is crucial for educational purposes, to honor the memory of the victims, and to ensure that such horrors are never repeated. Chat